It was Valmiki who wrote the Ramayana, and it was very interesting that he saw a hunter kill a cruncher bird while the bird was mating. And he was so angry at the hunter that he cursed the hunter. But his curse was in a poetic meter that had never been heard before. And afterwards he was thinking, why did I get so angry at this hunter to curse him? And then Lord Brahma came and he said, because in your anger, you thought up this new poetic meter, and it is in this poetic meter that you should tell the story of Lord Ram. So King Dasarath had 3 queens, but he had no heir. And this is a repeated theme throughout the Shastra, that the kings or the rulers were very interested in having an heir. And this wasn't just because they liked kids and wanted to have kids, or that wasn't what was going on. But they were concerned about succession. They were concerned about longevity. They weren't just thinking about themselves. Right? Part of the purpose in our country of the idea of limiting how long a person can stay in power in politics is so that they won't just be thinking about themselves. That's the idea behind it, that they'll be thinking of the good of the country. So King Dasarath was thinking, how can I actually take care of my kingdom and make sure that when I'm ready to retire or when I die, that somebody takes it over? And in those days, you wanted to train that person from childhood. So he had no heir, and we're not going to tell the whole story of Rishishringa, although it's a very instructive and interesting story. But he came to perform this yajna. From the yajna appeared the payasa, and each of the queens took some. And so from that, we have Kosaya, who gave birth to Ram. We have Kaikeyi, who gave birth to Bharat. And then we had the twins, Shatrughna.
Forgot to click it.
Oh. Thank you. So then we had the twins born also of Lakshman and Shatrughna from Sumitra. Because I'm clicking it here, I got it now. And of course, this is one of the beauties of the Lord, that although, did I forget again? Am I right now? Okay. That although he says, Aham bija pratapita, I am everyone's father. Prabhupada talks about how in every religion they worship God as the Father, but yet we Vaishnavas understand that we can worship the Lord as our child. So I'd like us to think about Dasarath and Kausalya, how much love they were feeling for the Lord as their child. And of course Dasarath with his queens, how much they were getting pleasure from the childhood playful pastimes of the Lord and his manifestations. So these four brothers are generally understood as Vishnu Tattva. Sometimes they're understood as the weapons of the Lord. But there was this loving feeling, just like those of us who have children, we know how much affection we feel for our children. Who's just a little jiva. Imagine if you could feel that much affection for the Lord as your child. So it was very important that if you're having these children to be your successor, that you want to make sure that you train them properly. And therefore the four brothers were trained in Shastra, they were trained in ruling, they were trained in military arts. And then they all got to be teenagers, they got to be 16. And one day, the great sage Vishwamrita came to visit Dasarath. And when he came to visit Dasarath, he's asked Dasarath, how's everything going in your kingdom? And Dasarath says to him, how is everything going for you with conquering repeated birth and death? Srila Prabhupada often makes the point that when we greet somebody and we ask about them, we should ask about them in relationship to them and their life. What's going on in their life? Are they a renunciate? Are they a householder? Are they a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra? What are they doing in the world? And we ask their welfare according to that. And then Dasarath did something, he seemed to have a habit of this, that he says to Vishwamrita, what would you like? I'll give you whatever you like. Careful about doing this. Be very careful about doing this. Of course, Bali did this with Mom and Dave also. If you do it with Krishna, that's okay. But be careful. So then Vishwamitra said, I want 2 of your kids. Imagine that. Some guest comes to your house. So what can I get for you? Your child. Take them. So Vishwamitra said, we're doing this yajna, and there's these demons bothering the yajna, and because I'm a brahmana, I'm not supposed to use my powers against these demons. This has to be done by kshatriya. He said, I have the ability to kill them, but that's not my dharma. And Daswa said, well, I can do it. Vishwamitra said, no, I want your children. And then Daswa was like, no, don't take my children. And then his guru, Vasistha, says, don't worry, Vishwamitra will take good care of them. So finally, Ram and Lakshman did go with Vishwamitra Muni. And as they were traveling, they came upon a deserted hermitage where Vishwamitra asked Ram to put his lotus feet onto a stone, at which point from the stone came Ahalya. Now, Ahalya had been tricked by Indra into having an adulterous affair, and when her husband found out, he cursed her to become a stone. And here she was again, brought back to her original form to be reunited with her husband. Now again, as we were looking at feelings, so how would it feel if you were there, being cursed to be a stone for a very long time, and then you feel on your body the soft touch of Lord Ramachandra's feet, which then sheds your sinful reactions and your curse and restores you to your form. So then, moving on, Vishwamitra said, well, the first demon you're going to have to kill is going to be Taraka. She's the mother of the demons that are bothering our sacrifice, and she's turned the whole forest into like a graveyard. And Ram was like, we're not supposed to kill women. And he said, well, this isn't just a woman, it's a demon. And interesting that for both Krishna and Ram, that the first demon they killed is a woman. Are we still there? Did it change? Okay, good. So then Ram and Lakshman come to the yajna area, and there he was told that Subahu and Marich were regularly polluting the yajna by throwing like blood and guts and bones and things like that. Imagine that if we went to do a yajna here, and some demon starts throwing like body parts and blood and feces and stuff. So this is what was happening. And therefore they weren't able to do the yajna, it kept getting polluted. So Ram and Lakshman, they protected the yajna and they killed Subahu. They didn't kill Marich. Now this is interesting. We find that the Lord doesn't always do exactly what we would expect him to do. Right? Like when Krishna appears in the prison of Kamsa, he doesn't immediately kill Kamsa. He could. He killed Putana not long after that. He could have killed Kamsa in his baby form, but he doesn't. He goes to Vrindavan and he comes back a long time later to kill Kamsa. And so sometimes we don't understand how the Lord is acting in our life. Why is it that he does this or does that? But Ram didn't kill Marich. Instead, he simply took his arrow and took Marich at a long distance away. At which point Marich decided that he wasn't going to do demon stuff anymore, and he engaged in various austerity. So Vishwamitra was very pleased with Ram and Lakshman having taken care of these demons, and he said, there's some place I'd like you to go. He said, some time ago, Janak Maharaj was plowing the ground for a sacrifice, and his plow hit a box under the earth, and there he found a divine child, who he raised as his daughter. And this child, this young girl, is now of marriageable age, and there's going to be a Swayamvar to accept her as one's wife. Now, just a little side point about Vishwamitra Muni. Vishwamitra Muni is one of the very few rare examples of someone who changed their varna in one life. but it was a long life. It was a 60,000-year life, so it's not really very applicable to any of us. But he was a Kshatriya, and when his weapons were superseded by that of Vasistha, with just Vasista's Brahmin staff, Vishwamitra decided, better to be a Brahmana, I'd be more powerful. That was his motive. He's actually thinking in Kshatriya terms about becoming a Brahmana. And it took him a long time and a lot of difficulty. He ended up in problems with a couple of celestial women and so forth. You know, it wasn't a smooth sailing at all. He and Vasistha got into a battle where they cursed each other to become birds, and so many things happened. Anyway, he finally became not only a Brahmana, but a great Brahmana. Maharshi became a great Brahmana, but not only that, he became ultimately a pure devotee of the Lord. And his mood is that of Vatsalya, or parental mood. But a very specific parental mood, he's that of a matchmaker. So in 3 different Leelas at least, he acts as a matchmaker. In Krishna Leela, he's the Brahmana who brings Rukmini's message to Krishna. In Chaitanya Leela, he is the matchmaker who arranges the marriage between Mahaprabhu and Lakshmi Priya. And now he's about to facilitate the marriage of Ram and Sita. So he tells this story, and so they go to Mithila. And when Ram and Lakshman go to Mithila, much like when Krishna goes to Indraprasthas, we've just been reading about. So everyone in the city comes out and sees who are these incredibly beautiful, strong, powerful people. And Vishwamitra tells Ram and Lakshman that Janaka, Sita's father, had Shiva's bow that was so heavy that it took, by some accounts, 300 strong people, by other accounts, 1,500 strong people, in order just to move it from one place to another. But when Sita was a little girl, she moved it herself with one hand in order to get a bow. And so after seeing that, Janaka says, whoever can string this bow should marry Sita. So there was this big swayamvar, where Ram not only strung the bow, but he, what? Broke it. Yes. We should have sound. It was beautiful sound. So I really lost it. So here we had that when Janak saw that his daughter was going to marry Ram, he suggested to Dasarath that his own actual daughter, Urmila, be married to Lakshman. And when they invited Dasarath to come for the wedding, he suggested that his other 2 sons could marry Dasarath's nieces. So the cousins also got married, and there was a quadruple wedding. So at the end of this wedding, when they were going back to Ayodhya, again, we missed the sound. They were surprised by Parasuram. Now, Parasuram is the incarnation of the Lord. He's a Shaktavesh avatar, and he challenged the Lord, and he says, how is it that you've broken the bow of Shiva? You're not supposed to break the bow of Shiva. This is improper, and I'm going to chastise you. And he said, let me see if you can string the bow of Vishnu. And so Ram actually took this bow and strung it and put an arrow on it and said, all right, I've done this. I have to shoot the arrow somewhere. What would you like to lose? Would you like to lose your austerity? Would you like to lose your ability to move? And Parasuram said, you know what, this it's not my time anymore on the planet. Now it's your time. I'm just going to go and perform austerities. Then, for a very long time, everybody was very happy in Ayodhya. Many times in our life, we think, okay, I've gotten this, and I've gotten this, and this has happened, and now this is all set, and now my life's just going to be nice, right? Right? This happens sometimes. So you think, okay, I got my degree, I got my job, I got married, I got a house, I got a car, everything was all set. Now we're just happy. And then something happens. Yes? Could be a little thing, like your plumbing breaks and your basement floods. It could be a huge thing, like your kid dies, or you get deported, or, something. People think that in the realm of the Lord, that perfection is just some kind of like, Om Shanti. But there's all different variety, and the emotions we feel in this world, this is a very important point about the Ramayana, because starting at this moment, we're about to segue into a tragedy. So it's very important to remember that even the so-called negative emotions of the Lord are all blissful. In this world, even the positive emotions that we experience in terms of false ego are troublesome. But in spiritual life, even the so-called negative emotions are blissful. So when Kaikeyi was a little girl, she had a maidservant who took care of her. And this maidservant went with her when she got married to Dasarath, Mantra, and Mantra was twisted in both body and mind. She was someone who wasn't thinking about the good of the kingdom. In fact, she wasn't really even thinking about the good of Kaikeyi. She was really just thinking about herself. And when she heard that Dasarath was going to do a coronation for Ramachandra, and quickly, that it was going to be done the next day while Bharat was out of the kingdom, she immediately went into a conspiracy theory. Right? Maybe you know people like this? Like, as soon as something happens, immediately they just become very negative and they start catastrophizing. Oh no, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. Oh, some terrible thing, Like your spouse doesn't come home when you expect and doesn't call, and you try to call and the phone's offline and you think, oh no, they're in an accident, they're dead, they're brain damaged. So Mantra was this kind of a person. She just immediately went to this worst case scenario and she decided, Dasarath is scheming. He's done this to disenfranchise my mistress. He wants, and then she starts manipulating Kaikeyi. This is Leela, but it's still very instructive. Because we have to be careful that we don't become manipulated. What association do we have? Who's our association? We can think, oh, this is a person who's my friend and my associate, but if they themselves are faithless and they themselves are negative and critical, they can bewilder us. Because first, when Mantra goes to Kaikeyi dismisses it, and she just says, this is all nonsense, there's no conspiracy. I love Ram, I love Ram as much as I love Bharat. And he loves me. What's the problem? But then, Mantra starts appealing to her sense of royalty, and she says, once Ram's enthroned, nothing's going to come through your son. Your branch is finished. And so you're going to be finished. And you're going to end up being Kausalya's servant. And Bharat's going to be Ram's servant, which Bharat wouldn't have minded that at all. But that was her whole mentality. You're just going to be a servant. And at this point, Kaikeyi was bewildered. Again, this is Leela, but still, we should understand that we can become bewildered. So then Kaikeyi, she's manipulated by Mantra, and then she goes into manipulating Dasarath. She takes off her jewelry, and she lies down in the sad room. Imagine having so many rooms in your house that you could have a room for being sad. I don't know if they had a room for every emotion, or they play sad songs in there or something, So this was the sad room. So she's just lying on the floor. And Dasarath is kind of exuberant, right? Because he's about to do this coronation, and they're already getting everything ready. So he's in this really exuberant, happy, overflowing mood. And he talks to Kausalya, and he talks to Sumitra, and then let me go see Kaikeyi, and then where is she? Where is Kaikeyi? Oh, she's in the lamentation room. And he's so happy, he's in this happy mood, and then he is the kind of person who just kind of says, whatever you like, you can have. He just seems to be like that. So he goes in the room, and she's lying on the floor, and she's lamenting, and he says to her, what's wrong? What's wrong? Is there anything I can do for you? I'll do for you whatever you want. Anything, look, I got a whole kingdom. I can give you part of it. I can give you anything. What would you like? Come be happy. She says, oh, you'll give me whatever I like, huh? She says, a long time ago you promised me that. I saved your life on the battlefield, and you said I could have two things, whatever I like. You remember? He says, yeah, I remember. Were you ready to give those to me? And what's he thinking? What's she going to want? Right? But when we trust people, right? Like people you trust, like your family, so they have access to your car keys and your house keys and maybe your passwords and your bank account, and you don't think about it. So he's just trusting. And she said, I want my son to be the king. And not only that, I want Ram banished for 14 years. Like Kaikeyi had convinced her that the only way to actually have this work was to have Ram out of the picture. So Dasarath was just absolutely heartbroken. And he couldn't do anything. And then his assistant, his advisor, Sumitra, called and said, Ram, your father and Kaikeyi want to see you. And Kaikeyi says, your father has banished you to the forest for 14 years to fulfill his promise to you. And Ram's like, fine, whatever my father wants me to do, I will do. I don't have a problem with that. If my father wants me to go to the forest, I'll go to the forest. Whatever would please him. This is the mood of the Lord actually towards his devotees. So Ram's setting an example of Dharma, but he's also showing this mood towards his devotees. And of course, when Lakshman hears about this, Lakshman's first inclination was, let's fight. And Ram says, we're not fighting our father. That's not happening. We're not having a war against our father. And then Lakshman says, then I'm going to come with you. And when Sita hears, she says, I'm coming with you. He said, what are you coming with me? I'm exiled to the forest. Go home, stay with your father for a while. She says, no, when we got married, it was that whatever you experience, I also experience. Just like even, in America, at least used to be, the marriage vows were like richer or poorer, sickness or health. Right? Not that your husband's exiled and you're in a palace. She says, no, I'll come. I'll come to the forest. And Kaikeyi was so cruel. She said all three of them should put on bark garments. She was in such a mood of cruelty. And what we want to access here is especially the mood of Dasarath, how he was torn apart in love for Lord Ramachandra. And the mood of Lakshman and Sita of loyalty. So Ram takes blessings from his mother Kausalya to go to the forest, and then all the citizens want to come to the forest with Lord Ramachandra. So when Ram, Sita, Lakshman are going to the forest, they all follow him. Of course, Kaikeyi is very angry about this. She says, what's the use of my son ruling an empty kingdom? But anyway, Ram didn't want them to go to the forest, so while they were sleeping, he left them and he crossed the river. Imagine, again, going with following Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, being willing to go to the forest, and then he cheats you. You wake up in the morning and he's gone. Then in the forest, they come to Guha, who's the leader of some tribals, and he invites them to come and stay with him. He said, you can come and stay in my village for your 14 years of exile. And Ram said, no, I'm not supposed to go into any city. I'm not supposed to go into any village. I'm supposed to just live in the forest, which is important in many ways later on. But that's when Ram and Lakshman take some sap to mat their hair. And they said, Guha, why don't you show us where we can go in the forest? Where's a nice, safe place to go in the forest? So Guha arranges that they can go on a boat across the Ganga. And the boatman asks as his payment that he can wash the lotus feet of the Lord. Sita offers prayers to the Ganga, and she offers prayers for their safe return. And again, getting into the feeling of this boatman, how nice it would be to have the Lord in your boat. But you don't get to see him very long. You just take him across and drop him off. Then in the forest, they meet the sages who live in the forest, and the sages inform them that there's many demons that are eating sages in the forest. So, of course, we all know that there are cannibals, but I don't think we expect to meet any in our lifetime. And you don't have to worry that we're sitting in the New Goloka forest meditating that we're going to get devoured. So these sages were worrying about this, and they asked Ram, can you please protect us against these Rakshasas? And Ram immediately said, yes, I will do this. And it's very interesting, after this, when Ram, Lakshman, and Sita are going through the forest, Sita says to Ram, why did you do this? Why did you tell the sages that you would protect them? Bharat is the king. You're not a king. You're in exile. You don't have any kshatriya duty now to protect the sages. You're in a different place. And Ram said, well, actually not. He said, we're still actually kshatriya grahastas. I haven't given up my duties. He said, anyway, I already promised. So whether it was right or wrong, I already promised. Yeah, so just like those of us who've taken vows of initiation, so I've sometimes heard people say, well, I don't really have to keep my vows because I really didn't really know what I was doing, and I was young, and this or that. I've heard this kind of thing. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Right? You promise to marry someone, you promise to be someone's disciple, then you follow. And this is the examples Ram's giving. He said, I already promised them. That's it. Whether it was right or wrong, that's what it is. He said, but anyway, this is my duty. I'm still doing my duty. Meanwhile, back in Ayodhya, Dasarath has Sumitra come back without Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, and he grieves and dies. And as he's dying, he remembers that when he was a young man, he had accidentally killed a young Brahmin boy and been cursed by that boy's parents to die in separation from his son. What's particularly interesting is that somehow by the arrangement of Lord Ramachandra, Dasarath had become completely detached from his kingdom. He'd been completely detached from his family life. He'd been completely detached from everything. And he left this world in total absorption on Lord Ramachandra. So it looks tragic. It looks tragic, his wife betrayed him and his son is exiled and so forth. But actually he was in the greatest situation of spiritual samadhi and bliss. So Bharat comes back, finds out that his father's died, finds out that his mother did this manipulative conniving to make him the king. And he renounces his mother. Prabhupada gives him as the example of someone who renounces their mother. So even under normal, this is kind of what Krishna talks about in Apichet Sutaracharo, that even if a devotee does something abominable, they're still saintly. So normally, to renounce your mother is abominable. Yes? But because his mother had been such an offender against the Supreme Lord, he says, you're not my mother anymore. I'll accept you as one of the queens of my father, but you're not my mother. And I'm not participating in this. Which was interesting because everyone assumed that Bharat was behind this whole thing. They had assumed that Kaikeyi had done this on Bharat's instigation. And again, to try to access the feelings of the devotees, how would Bharat feel? He's coming back to his home, he's hoping to see his parents, he's hoping to see his brothers, and instead he finds the kingdom desolate without Ram. And he's being asked to usurp Ram's position. And so he says, I don't care if this was my father's promise, I'm not following it. Now, this fact is also very interesting. Srila Prabhupada contrasts Vasudeva and Dasarath. That Vasudeva promised Kamsa, I'm going to give you all my children. But he didn't give Kamsa Krishna, correct? He broke his promise for the sake of Krishna. Whereas Dasarath makes this promise and he keeps it. So Bharat is saying, it's more important to put Ram on the throne than to maintain this promise of my father. So because of that, he goes to the forest with a whole retinue to try to convince Ram to return. When Lakshman sees them from a distance, he says, oh, Bharat has now come to reclaim the kingdom with an army. Right? He also immediately jumps to a negative. And Ram says, no, Bharat's not going to do that. Of course, then Bharat comes and is welcomed, and he says, my dear Lord, you come back, my dear older brother, you come back and you rule the kingdom. I don't want anything to do with this. I had nothing to do with this, and I don't want to have anything to do with this. And Ram says, I can't do that. I'm going to keep my father's promise. And Bharat says, well, I'm not going to rule, and you had this. Of course, it's interesting because they're all Vishnu Tattva, so it's like the Lord arguing with himself. Yes? Do you ever argue with yourself? I sometimes argue with myself. But I'm just one person just going on in my mind. Whereas with the Lord, there's Ram and Bharat, and they're having this argument. So finally, Bharat proposes some way of some conciliatory method. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll rule, but I'm not going to rule as the king. You be the king, and I'll rule for 14 years as your servant. And he said, you please accept these shoes, and then I'll take the shoes and I'll put them on the throne. So Ram finally says, okay. He was defeated by Bharat's love. It's interesting, when Bharat went back, he didn't live in the palace. He lived in a hut, and he just drank barley cooked in the urine of a cow. He decided that he was going to do more austerities than Ram was doing in the forest. So he ruled the kingdom as an ascetic outside of the palace. So then Ram said, we can't stay here anymore, because now Bharat's come from Ayodhya. Everybody knows where we are. And if everybody knows where they are, they're going to keep coming and visiting us, and it's going to cause a disturbance to Ayodhya. So let's move on. So they start wandering through the forest. And remember, Ram had made this vow to kill the demons, so it wasn't long before they had an opportunity. They came upon the demon Virad. And so he was the first demon that they killed. After a while, they settled in Panchavati. And there in Panchavati, they were very near an outpost of Ravana's brothers, Kara and Dushan and Trishiras, and one of Ravana's sisters, Shurpanaka. And Shurpanaka fell in love with Lord Ram, or rather fell in lust with Lord Ram. And she decided that she wanted to have an affair with him. So she comes and she says, why don't you come and sport with me? So perhaps some of you know that I used to play in the Ramayana. Did any of you know that? So it was a long time in New York. We had a real theater, like a real theater. We actually had reviews as an off Broadway theater. So, long story how I ended up playing Shurpanika, but I would play Shurpanika. And I remember our director, who's gone from this world, most of those people who were in that play are no longer on this planet. So Lokamangala would tell me, you've got to act more like a demon. And I remember, behind the stage, I was just saying, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. I was reciting the 16th chapter, right, trying to get into a demon mood. And then I just still remember my lines, So I would go to Ram and I'd say, you should unite with me, O best of men. Be my consort. Who is this ugly woman to you? And Ram said, well, I can't. I've taken this vow of only one wife. Now, that is not like our modern only one wife, where you have one wife for a while and then you divorce her and then you have another wife and then you divorce her and then another wife. Not like that. Even if your spouse dies, you don't marry again. That was this vow. He said, so I've taken this vow of only one wife. He said, but my brother hasn't taken this vow. And his wife didn't come with him to the forest, so he's here all alone. Maybe you can marry him. And then Lakshman's like, he said, you're a princess, right? He said, but I'm just here as a servant. You don't want to be a servant, right? Come on, you should be married to the king, you should marry Ram. Right? And then she realizes they're playing with her. And she gets very angry, and she says, this is Sita. It is the Sita that's come between me and you. Now I will kill her. Yes. I don't know if I did that very convincingly. Lokamangala was always telling me to become more convincing. And when Shurpanika went to kill Sita, then Lakshman cut off her nose and ears. And she ran screaming to her brothers, Kar and Dushan and Trishiras, and she said, look at what's been done to me. I've been deformed, I've been disfigured, I've been humiliated. You have to restore my honor. So Kar and Dushan marched with 14,000 Rakshasas upon the hermitage. And Ram says to Lakshman, go take Sita someplace where you're protected, and I will fight them alone. And then Ram single-handedly defeated all 14,000 Rakshasas. Only one, Akampan, survived. Shurpanika had also seen all of this. Now, she wanted, her goal was either to have Ram as her consort or to have him dead, right? Either she wanted to enjoy him or she wanted him killed. And when she saw that he had become victorious, she was really angry. So both Akampan and Shurpanika went to Ravana and told him what happened. But when Shurpanika went, she was very manipulative. We have this recurring theme of manipulation going on in the Ramayana. So she's very manipulative. And she goes to Ravana and she lies. She said, there's this human prince in the forest who's been exiled, but his wife is incredibly beautiful. I've never seen anyone so beautiful. My dear brother, I know you already have many queens and a whole harem and so many women at your disposal, but you don't have anybody like this Sita. And when I saw her, I thought, she's for my brother. And I wanted to capture her. And in order to capture her, I tried to get her, but then look what Ram and Lakshman did to me. He's supposed to protect me. He's supposed to be a hero, a brother, a king. This was really a long time ago. My daughter was 1 year old at the time. And a Kampan who'd been there, he was saying, don't have anything to do with this. He said, look, my dear King Ravana, don't do this. Ram is obviously not an ordinary human to defeat 14,000 Rakshasas on his own. Just stay away from this whole thing. And Ravana was so overwhelmed. First of all, his ego was humiliated by Shurpanakha in open court. So part of it was that she had embarrassed him in open court, and part of it was just his lust. So, when we're overcome by some kind of desire, and when we're overcome by our false ego, we do stupid things, yes?
Yes.
Yes. So Ram did something really stupid. Now, you might say, well, we don't do anything that stupid. But we do. Because we're all little Ravanas. We're thinking, let me enjoy the Lord's energy myself. That the essence of a materialistic consciousness is I want to be the enjoyer of the Lord's energies. Now, we actually can enjoy the Lord's energies through the Lord. We can enjoy the Lord's energies through the Lord. When we say Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, we're uniting the Lord and his energy, and we are enjoying. But if we try to separate the Lord's energy, we become defeated. But that is the essence of materialistic life. I'm trying to separately enjoy the Lord's energy. So Ravana decides that he's going to do this through deceit. We have a lot of deceit and manipulation going on in this story. So he's not going to fight Ram openly. So he goes to Marich and he says, all right, you're expert in mystic arts. I want you to bewilder Sita, change yourself to look like a golden deer, and that way I can carry Sita away. And Marich, like a Kampan, says, don't do this. This is just really stupid. Like, don't have anything to do with this. You're going to ruin your kingdom. Do we ever not listen to good advice? Have you ever not listened to good advice? Have you ever tried to give good advice to someone and they don't listen? And Ravana's like, look, you're going to do this, or I'm going to kill you. And he said, if I do this, Ram will kill me. And I said, well, even from a material perspective, if you're killed by an enemy, that's a heroic death. If you're killed by your own government, that's a shameful death. So better to be killed by Ram than be killed by you. Oh, this one. So then Marich takes the form of a golden deer. And when Sita sees him, she says to Ram and Lakshman, we just have about a year left in our time in the forest. Wouldn't it be nice to capture this deer? We can bring it back to Ayodhya as a pet. Or you can bring back the beautiful deer skin if you're not able to capture the deer alive. And Lakshman says, I don't think this is a real deer. I think it's some kind of demon magic. And Ram says, well, I don't have any problem dealing with demon magic. You take care of Sita, and I will get the deer. So then Ram goes to get the deer. And as he's going after Marich, Marich assumes his real form. And as Ram shoots him, he's saying, Lakshman, Sita, in Ram's voice. And Sita turns to Lakshman and says, you need to help your brother, he's in danger. It always fascinates me how the great devotees would think that Krishna is in danger. And Lakshman says, no, he can't be in danger. She says, you're hard-hearted. Oh, you just want Ram to die so that you can take me. And he's so offended that he leaves her. And now we have more deceit. So Ram dresses himself up as a holy man, coming to bear alms. We have this theme also happens in Krishna Leelas, where the demons dress themselves as devotees. So I don't know what's true now, but I know at least some years ago, that every year there were over 2,000 crimes in America of criminals who dressed themselves up like police officers. You know, if you really want to cause trouble, pretend to be a holy person. And so in every religious society, there are going to be sometimes demons who present themselves as saintly persons. So Ravana presented himself as a saintly person, and he begged alms from Sita, at which point he revealed his real form and kidnapped her. Now, right outside the hermitage, there was an old vulture named Jatayu. And when Jatayu saw that Ravana had put Sita on his chariot and was taking her away, he went to fight with Ravana. So in 1976, Srila Prabhupada came to New York for the Rath Yatra, and this was before I was acting in the Ramayana. So there was a performance of the Ramayana given in the New York theater. And that time Rasigya was Sita, and Lovitaksha was Ram, and Lokamangala was Ravana, Deva was Jatayu, and also Hanuman. And I was sitting 2 rows back behind Srila Prabhupada, and this particular scene, when this scene was being portrayed, so I remember when Jatayu was threatening Ravana, and then Rasigya, who Prabhupada said was the best actress in the world, she said, "No, Jatayu, don't." She says, "You are too old, and he is much stronger than you." And at that moment, for me, being there in Prabhupada's presence, the theater disappeared, and I was there actually in the Leela for a few moments. It was an absolutely incredible experience by the grace of Srila Prabhupada. So this particular aspect of the story is also always really affects me. One important point here is that Jatayu fails. Actually, just the other day I heard Prabhupada talking about this in the class. Jatayu fails. Ravana cuts off his wings and talons, and he fails. Ravana, he's able to destroy Ravana's chariot, but he wasn't able to kill Ravana or stop Ravana. And sometimes in our service, externally, we fail. We shouldn't expect that the externals are always going to work out. But you can say he was victorious. When Ram and Lakshman came back and found Sita missing and were looking everywhere for Sita, they found the dying Jatayu, who was able to tell them that Ravana had kidnapped Sita and gone toward the south. And Ram gave him a funeral like he would give for his own father. So then Ram and Lakshman went everywhere looking for Sita. As they were doing so, they were captured by the great demon Kabanda. Our theater troupe used to dress up in costume and go on Harinam, and we always brought Kabanda with us because he was a real showstopper on the sidewalk. And then we would invite people back to the temple and to the theater. So Ram and Lakshman were captured by him, and they each took their swords and cut off his arms, at which point he displayed his celestial form, and he said, "You should go to get your wife, you should go see Sabari. That Sabari has been waiting for you, and she will help you." So they came to the ashram of Matangi, Shabari's guru who had left the world. And when Shabari had been a tribal who had become a devotee, and her spiritual master had told her, "Don't leave the world with me." She wanted to leave at the same time as her guru. He said, No, don't leave with me. He said, "Someday the Lord in his form of Ram and Lakshman will come and see you." He didn't say when. Just like Prabhupada tells us, if we chant Hare Krishna, eventually we'll see Krishna. He didn't say when exactly. But it will happen. And it's happening to so many devotees. Anyway, so Shabari, every day she's preparing. She doesn't know when he's going to come. So every day she's preparing the path. Every day she's preparing forest berries and fruits, waiting. My guru said he will come, someday he will come. And then there's Ram and Lakshman. Actually finally came. And of course, it's a sweet story that she wanted to make sure that the berries were sweet, so she was tasting each one first. Normally you don't do that, right? You don't normally like taste something. Should I tell you a funny story? So Mukunda Maharaj tells this story that when he was very new in the Hare Krishna movement, you know, he was the first devotee, right? Mukunda Maharaj, so he was the first devotee in New York, 66. So he was riding in a car where he was driving, Prabhupada was in the passenger seat, and he gave Prabhupada a date. So Prabhupada took a bite of the date and then gave it to Mukunda. And Mukunda thought, oh, I guess this is what they do in India. They take bites and give it back to the other person. So he took a bite and gave it back to Srila Prabhupada. So Shabri was doing this and Ram was accepting it. And then in the presence of Ram and Lakshman, she left her body and went to the spiritual world, telling them that they would get help from Hanuman and Sugriva and directing them to Lake Pampa to find them. So Ram and Lakshman, following her instructions, goes to Lake Pampa where they meet Hanuman and Sugriva. And Sugriva said, like you, I am also in exile, and my wife has also been taken from me by my brother. And I cannot help you until I get my kingdom back. So you please kill my brother. And then Ram killed Bali in a way that's not generally done by Kshatriyas. He engaged Bali in fighting with Sugriva and he killed Bali like a hunter from behind a tree. And when Bali objected, Ram said, because you are so sinful, abducting your brother's wife in your brother's kingdom, therefore you could not be killed in a heroic fashion. So then Sugriva takes back over his kingdom and the rainy season starts. So everything's kind of put on hold. Just like we had a few weeks ago, it seems amazing now, but you know, remember it wasn't that long ago, we had that ice storm and snowstorm and everything was closed and we couldn't even have a festival for Lord Nityananda, right? Remember way back? In this 80-degree weather. So, you know, it's rainy season, so everything stops. And meanwhile, Sugriva got really into enjoying his kingdom because he had been doing austerities for so long. And after the rainy season, he doesn't come forward. And Ram says to Lakshman, you know, he promised to help, the rainy season's over, where is he? Now again, remember how Ram couldn't go into any city? So therefore, he wasn't going to go into Kishkinda, so Lakshman went. Lakshman's a little fiery. Like, remember how he was going to fight Dasara? So he's a little fiery. I was just reading this morning the story of Balaram going to drag Hastinapuram to the Ganga over Samba. So anyway, Lakshman's a little fiery, and he goes in there, and he's like practically causing an earthquake going into Kishkinda. And he's like, where is your help? Just now coming. So Sugriva gathers all the armies together, and he divides them into different parts for the different directions. But because Jatayu had said that Ravana went to the south, they felt most confident that Sita could be found in the south, and therefore Hanuman was given, he was put in charge of the group that was going south, and he was given Ram's ring to present to Sita, because Sita had not met the monkeys, she wouldn't know who they were, as a token that he was coming from Ram. Notice I like MS Subbulakshmi. So there are many, many adventures, which we do not have time to tell at all, but many, many adventures. They ended up in a mystic cave and so forth. And finally, they end up on the shore of the ocean, where they meet Jatayu's brother, Sampati, who's able to tell them, hey, I can see Sita in Lanka across the ocean, but who is going to get there? Right? And some of the monkeys say, well, I can jump halfway there. And some say, well, I can jump there, but I can't jump back. And Prabhupada talks about this in relationship to taking sannyas. He says, you know, if you're going to take sannyas, you have to do it. You can't just jump halfway. And that's not going to work, just fall into the ocean. So then Jambavan reminds Hanuman He says, actually, you have great powers. These powers have been hidden from you, but you actually have this ability. So Hanuman then jumps across the ocean, and of course there's, again, many things that go on, many of the helpers and difficult demons he meets around the way. And eventually he comes to Lanka, and first he's looking for Sita in the palaces where he sees the various queens. And no, because he hadn't met Sita, he didn't know what she looked like. But he's saying, I don't think this one's Sita, I don't think this one's Sita, I don't think so, she wouldn't be like this. And Ravana, that's not. So then he starts going around, and he comes to the Ashok garden.
And I'm missing you, and I'm missing you, my Lord, and I'm missing you, and I'm missing you, my Lord, and I'm missing you, my Lord.
So Hanuman's very small up in the tree, and he hears Ravana threatening Sita. If you don't surrender to me in 2 months, I'm going to cut you up and eat you for breakfast. Imagine someone saying, if you don't love me, I'm going to eat you up for breakfast. Like, what kind of love is that? and Sita's like, she said, I remember this line too. She said, why would a royal swan who sports with her mate amidst lotus flowers consort with a crow who lives in filthy places? You have not long to live, and these Rakshasas who support you will also die. I don't remember the whole script. So then Hanuman up in the tree starts singing the glories of Lord Ramachandra. And Sita is wondering, who is singing, who is singing? And then he comes in front of her and she says, oh, Ravana, you've taken another disguise. He says, no, I'm actually here as the servant of Ram. Here is his ring, as his token. If you like, I can carry you back to Ram. She said, no. She said, that is not proper. He said, Ram should rescue me himself. And then Hanuman was thinking, okay, well, I did my duty. I was supposed to find Sita and report back to Ram. But now that I'm here, I might as well do a little bit of reconnaissance. You know, let's do some spying and let's figure out the whole lay of the land, and let's put some fear into the heart of Ravana. So he goes in this Ashok Grove. Remember, he's a monkey. He goes in the Ashok Grove and he starts knocking the fruit off the trees and knocking down the trees and eating the fruits and causing a general disturbance. And so Ravana sends one of his sons who ties Hanuman up, not knowing that Hanuman cannot be tied up by anything. But Hanuman basically allows himself to be tied up and brought into the court of Ravana. When he's brought into the court of Ravana, he tells him, look, you're finished. You should return Sita or Ram's going to defeat you. And Ravana gets so angry, he says, kill this monkey. And Vibhishan, Ravana's brother, this is important, he says, you can't kill a messenger. He said, you can deform him or brand him, but you can't kill him. And so Ravana says, all right, let's set his tail on fire and drag him through the streets, which meant that Hanuman got to see all the streets, right? He got to see the whole city, so he got to find the whole lay of the land. So after setting fire to Lanka, he jumps back over the ocean, and he goes back with the monkeys to Kishkinda, at which time they're celebrating, and so they're destroying Sugriva's orchards. So Sugriva can understand they had found Sita. So then they go with the whole army to the shore of the ocean, but they weren't going to jump over it. And so Lord Ramachandra asked the ocean to give way. And when it won't, he starts to burn the ocean. At which point the Devi of the ocean, Samudra, comes before him and says, "I'm so sorry, what would you like?" And Lord Ramachandra says, "Let us build a bridge across the ocean." So as they're going to do this, something is happening in Lanka. And that is Vibhishan is getting very upset about the fact that Hanuman burned Lanka. And he's telling Ravana, look, this is no good. What you're doing is no good. You've taken another man's wife. She doesn't even want you. And now, just look, just one of his servants has burned down the whole city. Just surrender and give Sita back. And Ravana says to him, you know, you're not really acting like my brother here. You should just be killed or imprisoned. And so Vibhishan leaves, very, very much like the way Vidura left when Duryodhana insulted him. So Vibhishan just leaves. He takes a few of his trusted friends. Prabhupada said at that time he had a mood of like taking sannyas. He was leaving his kingdom, he was leaving his family, everything. Of course, it all got restored. And he comes to find Ram on the shore of the ocean. And he says, I want to come and take shelter. And nobody wants to accept him. You know, it's so interesting because we have Mantara, who was actually evil, looking like a friend. We had Ravana, who dresses himself up as a holy man. We have Marich, who looks like a deer. They're actually evil, but they look good. Now we have someone who's good but looks evil. And so everyone says, no. He's a brother of the enemy. He's a demon. Don't forget it. And Hanuman said, but he stood up for me in the court. He was the one who saved my life in the court. And Lord Ramachandra says, even if Ravana comes and surrendered, I will accept. Anyone who comes and surrenders, immediately, I will accept. And not only does he accept him, he crowns him as the king of Lanka. Then we have the building of the bridge, the throwing of stones, which I'm not sure if we're going to see that. When are we going to see that play? So maybe next week? Next week. Okay, and my daughter's been collecting stones. They're pillows, but they're stones.
I think it's going to be on Thursday.
Oh, it's going to be on Thursday.
I think so.
The drama's going to be Thursday? Thursday or next Sunday? On Thursday. Wow, so those of you who come on the real day, you get to see the stones. Bridge. So they build this bridge of stones, and then there's a very long battle. Of course, again, I wish we had time to go into all the details because so many wonderful things in the battle. Ravana's brothers and sons just keep getting killed, and he still doesn't surrender. Right? It's just like all of us in material life. This plan doesn't work, that plan doesn't work, this thing happens, that thing happens. We keep finding out that we're not the controller, we're not the enjoyer, and we still don't want to surrender. So Ravana is kind of like that. And every once in a while it feels like he's gained an advantage. Like every once in a while we think, now I'm enjoying the world according to my plans. So he employs this snake weapon against Ram and Lakshman, and he thinks he's become victorious. He thinks they've been defeated. And then Garuda shows up and eats the snake weapon. Okay, it's not working. All right, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Ravana's thinking, what am I going to do? Oh, I know. I have a brother. Let's wake him up. And Kumbhakarna gets woken up, and he starts like eating the monkeys. You know, stepping on them and eating them, and it looks really disastrous. And Ram's able to cut off both his arms and throw him in the ocean. Right? Then we have an attack on Lakshman. And it looks like Lakshman's going to die. What to do? And then, you know, they're just like, nowadays we have like an army medic. So they had an army medic And he said, I know what can cure him, the Sanjeevani herb. Oh, good, where is it? In the Himalayas. And Hanuman says, well, I can go there. What does it look like? Oh, it looks like this, 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 this. You ever done shopping for somebody else? Okay, ever done shopping for someone else and they say, okay, I want this particular type of olive, this brand, and you go to the store and you're like, and you ask someone at the store, what aisle is it in? And you're looking and you can't find it. So that's what's happening to Hanuman, right? He's like going to the mountain and he's like, I don't know where it is. Imagine like you bring the whole store back home, you know. I put the whole food line in the trunk for you. Pick it out yourself. So Hanuman, he just brings back the whole mountain. Prabhupada talks about this. He said, you know, that we all have some abilities. That Hanuman, he was a monkey. He wasn't like an Ayurvedic doctor. But he was very strong. So can you see Hanuman up there in the sky? The mountain. Bringing the mountain. Now, of course, one of the most amazing battles is that between Lakshman and Indrajit, where Vibhishan gives them information how they can defeat Indrajit, and Lakshman defeats Indrajit, which really devastated Ravana, but not enough to surrender. It devastated him, it infuriated him, but not enough to surrender. So finally, Ravana goes to fight Ram directly. And Indra sent Ram his own chariot and chariot driver to make the battle more equal. But still, superficially, Ravana is this huge 10-headed demon, and Ram seems to be a human prince. But of course he's not. He's the supreme Lord. And therefore, ultimately, he shot an arrow in Ravana's heart. I should get more clever at these things. Now, it's also interesting when Ravana was dead, his wife Mandodari, who's one of the most chaste women in the universe, she wasn't a fool. She said, because you have tried to kidnap the mother of the universe, you've made your body fit to be eaten by vultures and your soul fit to go to hell. And Vibhishan was lamenting. He loved his brother. And he said, why were you so foolish as to try to fight against the Lord? So this should be a happy ending now. Unfortunately, it isn't immediately, because when Sita is brought, then Ram asked Lakshman to build a fire to test that Sita actually had not had a relationship with Ravana. So this is a very heartbreaking part of the Ramayana, and something that Lakshman was angry at Ram about, which is again is interesting since they are the same person. But now everybody goes back to Ayodhya. I mean, and everybody, it wasn't just Ram and Lakshman and Sita, but Hanuman and Sugriva went, and they all got on Ravana's airplane. Ravana's flower airplane that he had stolen from Kuvera. And they took this back to Ayodhya. And the Bhagavatam says, as the Lord sat on his airplane of flowers with women offering him prayers and reciters chanting about his characteristics, he appeared like the moon with the stars and planets. So 14 years, of course, this is the Diwali festival where all of Ayodhya is filled with light. And they are received by all of the queens. Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki. So we don't like it if the story absolutely ended here. Of course, we know that when Sita is pregnant later with twins, that Ram, going as a spy, hears people, at least one person criticizing her, and he decides that if people are going to be critical of the government cannot rule properly. Not like 2026 world. He said, I don't want there to be any stain, even thought of stain on the government. So he sends Sita to the forest to live in Valmiki's ashram. Later, Love and Kush would learn the Ramayana, come and sing the Ramayana in Ram's court, and Ram finds out that they are his children, and he asks for Sita to come back. She's like, no, I'm not coming back. It's enough already. Better that I go back to the earth from where I came. So Hanuman is always singing the Ramayana. Srila Rupa Goswami says the reason that we know that this so-called tragic story is actually bliss is that Hanuman has been singing the Ramayana from the beginning of time. And if we would like to have Ram and Sita always united, then we can do so with our own tongue and in our own heart by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Thank you very, very much.